I'm Francesca Page. The price of oil continues to climb, nearing $107 a barrel as the crisis in Iraq continues. The recent insurgency by al-Qaeda-linked rebels fueled concerns about crude oil supplies. Meanwhile, President Obama said there has been no disruption of oil supplies from the country. President of the BRG brokerage Jeff Grossman says there are no disruptions in oil deliveries or production at this time. However, the violence in Iraq has many investors concerned. Meanwhile, as President Obama considers U.S. involvement in Iraq, Iraqi war veterans in America are feeling a bit disappointed. The recent attacks by al-Qaeda-linked terrorists have left many people questioning President Obama's decision to withdraw U.S. troops from Iraq. Some of those concerned are Iraqi war veterans.
It's disheartening just based on the fact that we're watching all these different things in the news of these different cities we fought so hard for, and they're starting to slide back into the hands of guys that we considered the enemy. And, you know, we fought so long and so hard over there, and we left battle buddies on the ground over there that'll never come home, never hug their mother again. And to know that it's starting to fall back into the hands of what we consider the enemy, then it's absolutely disheartening. It's borderline heartbreaking.
Despite reports that a large number of men are volunteering to help defend Baghdad, many members of the Iraqi security forces abandoned their posts when ISIS rebels started taking control of Iraq. President Obama is saying Iraq will need America's help and says he's open to all military options. Thank you.
All right, folks, hour number 2 of the big Steve Malzberg Show, Friday edition, and joining us momentarily, Daniel Henninger, Deputy Editorial Page Director of the Wall Street Journal and Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, will be here to discuss his latest column for the Wall Street Journal, While Obama Fiddles. It's all about Iraq, Syria, and the mess that is the Middle East. Rich Lowry, Editor-in-Chief of National Review, joins us to discuss his magazine's editorial, The Crisis in Iraq, and how dithering is deadly. And then my friend Rita Cosby will be here, Emmy Award-winning TV and radio host, to discuss her recent interview with Pope Francis and the book that she wrote about her World War II veteran father. Sonia Nasseri-Cole, Afghan-American activist, director of the award-winning documentary The Black Tulip, will be here, and she will talk about her outrage over President Obama's recent prison swap with the Taliban. So a lot ahead, all that, Gimme 5 and more on this hour of the Steve Malzberg Show.
Ready? Fire away. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Broadcasting live from the Newsmax studio in New York City. A fusion of politics, commentary, entertainment, and sports. Steve and his team bring you the latest news and opinion now. Here is Steve Malzberg.
Those are harsh words from Dan Henninger at the Wall Street Journal, but I think there's a lot of truth to them. I found myself this week rereading the last foreign policy debate of the 2012 campaign, in which President Obama assured the country that core al-Qaeda, this menace, really had been, in his words, decimated. Romney was sputtering that there's still a problem, they're getting franchises, they're still dangerous in Iraq, and that wasn't what the country wanted to hear. It certainly wasn't what the president was saying. Now, 18 months later, we have a serious problem.
All right, that's David Ignatius, who was on this show yesterday, talking about our guest right now, Daniel Henninger of the Wall Street Journal, who is joining us today. I like to have one guest talking about the next guest. It kind of brings us all together, Daniel.
Yeah, why not? Well, with this subject, I think we're all in the same boat, as it were.
For the most part, I do have David Swerdlick of TheRoot.com coming up, and he says there's nothing to blame Obama for. But this Daniel, is not only a mess, but this is now a serious mess when you combine it with Syria and where we are in the Middle East.
Yeah, you're not kidding. And guess what? Our office got a email this afternoon from NATO headquarters in Brussels, in Belgium. And what NATO is saying is that they are concerned that they have observed Russian heavy artillery and tanks moving across the eastern border of Ukraine into Ukraine.
So they're using this as a diversion to do what they want to do.
Yeah, it sure sounds like it.
Wow.
But
Wow.
Russian tanks moving into eastern Ukraine on top of ISIS moving on Baghdad. What a wonderful world Barack Obama has left us.
But don't worry, Daniel, because the president told us today that over the next few days, he'll be meeting with his military advisors. And I've asked this question before to previous guests. It can't be that he just found out about this on TV when you and I did. Why hasn't he met with his military advisors? Even if he did find out about it yesterday, why wasn't there a course of action already planned? I didn't want him to announce the course of action, but why didn't he already do something by today?
Yeah, well, I got into that in my column, Steve, and I sort of rhetorically raised the question, did not United States intelligence services and security agencies know that ISIS was training to do this sort of thing in northern Iraq? And the answer is yes, they did know. In fact, the Defense Intelligence Agency, when it published its threat assessment in February, said explicitly that ISIS, quote, probably will attempt to take territory in Iraq and Syria, as they demonstrated recently in Ramadi and Fallujah, unquote. So then you say, well, weren't they sending this up to the White House? And I talked to a specialist who's been close to this process for the last 5 years, and he said they probably didn't. And the reason they probably didn't is they know by now it is a complete waste of time to try to send any such thing up to the White House, because they're simply not going to be interested in doing anything about it. And on the evidence of the sorts of things that President Obama has been saying in the last 24 hours, that's true. What's the point? It's depressing.
Unfortunately, there's no. Even if I wanted to play devil's advocate, there is nothing to say.
Yeah, and the Journal had a wonderful piece Monday by a couple of our Washington reporters about the extent to which the United States was caught off guard. But in that piece, they did make clear that our national security agencies recognize this, and they're really quite beside themselves over the fact that they have a leadership at the moment that just simply is not interested in reacting to this kind of reality. But I think at the margin, Steve, this sort of thing could probably do some real political damage to the president. I think his support is really beginning to erode. You get under some circumstances like this, where it's clear that the United States has to react in some way, to talk as he is, I think, is just going to begin to cause him a loss of support, even among some Democrats.
Well, of course, as you well realize, he's not running for anything, and it would behoove Democrats to separate themselves from him. I mean, I don't know, I just don't see how he's an asset to anybody who's running in a secure district, an insecure district, a toss-up district. I don't see how he's an asset to any of them, and I don't understand why more people on the other side, meaning the Democratic side, haven't come out along with the Boehners and the McCains and the others and blasted this president's inaction, the ineptness, and basically the overall foreign policy when it comes to the Middle East, which you also write about in your great piece, While Obama Fiddles.
Yeah. Well, I think the one individual in Congress who's begun to recognize this, if she didn't a long time ago, is Senator Dianne Feinstein of California. I mean, it was just about a week or so ago she was on CNN, I believe, and pretty explicitly separating herself from the president's view of the status of terrorism in the world. As she's put it, I see the intelligence reports, and I know that they are out there, and they are organized, and they are growing, and that they still constitute a threat to the United States. That was about 10 days before the events of this week took place. So, as I say, the people like Senator Feinstein, who are aware of what's been going on with al-Qaeda, I think have begun to find that the president's position is simply no longer defensible.
Does this, and this is a kind of off the beaten path, and we'll get back to the issue at hand, but does this offer Hillary a chance to, which she hasn't taken to my knowledge, to separate herself, or is it impossible for her to do that based on the fact that she was Secretary of State for all these years under Obama, and one could argue was complacent or following orders and did not resign if she were outraged over all of this foreign policy that has led us to this point?
Great question, Steve. And I think the answer is that, given that this is Hillary Clinton, the answer is all of those things. I mean, have you been listening to her recently?
I have.
She can, more eloquently than anybody, explain away virtually anything. And on this specific subject, I think the answer is that she will try to rationalize herself out from under it. But I have to say, I think it's going to be difficult. She was Secretary of State over those 4 years, and questions will be asked about what her view was of the threat from Al-Qaeda. And I think her biggest problem, Steve, is that she has to watch her flank on the left in the Democratic Party, the progressives, and to win, she's going to need their support, and they are going to want to see full-throated support for President Obama's foreign policy, because this is the foreign policy. This withdrawal of the U.S. from the world, this lowering of the American profile, this is the foreign policy they've always wanted. They're going to have to live with it for better or worse, but I don't think they're going to let Hillary separate herself from it.
Let me ask you about getting back to the foreign policy itself. I mean, we have a chance here, and I think it was Ralph Peters who brought this up on the show yesterday, to see the Obama legacy be a caliphate that stretches from, inside of Syria to, I don't know, maybe by tomorrow or the day after, to Baghdad. You got Iran in the mix now. But to me, when you look at the foreign policy of Obama from the get-go, with overthrowing Gaddafi and overthrowing Mubarak and fighting on the side of the God knows which terrorists in Syria, I just think that we really need to sit down and ask ourselves as a nation, what is our foreign policy goals? Because it doesn't seem to be any resemblance at all to what it's traditionally been forever.
Well, it has not, and that's because that the contemporary Democratic Party, the progressives, had a foreign policy dating back, as you well know, Steve, dating back to Vietnam and the McGovern years and what Gene Kirkpatrick called the San Francisco Democrats. These were Democrats, they were sort of national security Democrats like Senator Joe Lieberman
and
of
Scoop Jackson.
And Scoop Jackson of Washington. And Joe Lieberman was basically driven out of his own party. And there are no more Joe Liebermans in the Democratic Party. And so they've got a policy now of lowering America's profile in the world. And some of us have been warning for well over a year that when you do that, you are simply going to incentivize the bad guys everywhere, and that eventually something was going to pop big time. And now it has. What's going on in Iraq is the consequences of the United States not being engaged.
Yeah, we got about a minute left, Daniel. So what does Obama do militarily, if anything, in your view, here in Iraq?
Well, having let it disintegrate to this point, it's very difficult. But I think somehow we probably do have to hit ISIS. They cannot be allowed to take on Baghdad, because you're going to draw the Iranians into the battle, and you're going to allow Iran to move into southern Iraq, and you could end up with an effective partition with Iraq in the south and ISIS setting up a terrorist state in the north. That is just a result that is not acceptable. So, theoretically, Steve, you'd think the president's hand is going to have to be forced in this, and that they will have to hit ISIS.
Well, they better hurry up. And it would have been easier to do when the request was made earlier. But now it's going to get more difficult with every passing moment. But don't worry. In the next few days, he's going to meet with his military advisors and figure out what to do. So we're all okay. Daniel, great piece. Thanks as always for sharing with us. I appreciate having you on.
Good to talk to you, Steve.
Thank you. You too. Daniel Henninger, ladies and gentlemen, here on the Steve Malzberg Show. And we go from Daniel Henninger to Rich Lowry when we return right here on the Steve Malzberg Show. Do not go away.